anarchist, which is to say that I ultimately aim at the dissolution of government towards organisation of society by people themselves, which off the bat makes people panic and thinking, oh, but no, you can't just get rid of the police and so on and so forth. It's more nuanced than that, in that it has to be a gradual process. Even if it takes 2,000 years, where everybody comes round to the idea of doing so. And it does require everyone to decide to do it, because everyone's free to choose, and everyone has to choose out of their freedom to want to do it, to come together and work together. And despite it being quite a lot of people take that to sound very scary, because obviously you have to trust each other, and then your choice to pursue this, you have to let down your guard. But for me, it's quite an optimistic pursuit.
There's various issues and values where I would be conservative, and there's various issues where I would be socialist or left, or what you would determine left and right. I don't really kind of get the left and right spectrum. I did a political compass, and I've done it a couple of times, and it always seems to come out slightly left of centre, and you know, which is basically I'm kind of comfortable with that. You know, like I'm kind of balanced in the middle somewhere. I don't like extremes unless it's an emergency. I do see that there is sometimes a need to go to war, you know, to defend your rights and freedoms. I'm a firm believer in freedoms, that the state shouldn't interfere in things that don't matter, right? And you know, that goes as far as whether you are what your lifestyle's like, what your choices are like, but you should take responsibility.
Yeah, I would broadly describe myself as libertarian in the modern sense, which is basically market liberal. I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I'm not an anarchist. I believe there is a legitimate role for the state, but I believe that government should be as small as it can be, and the state should have a fairly minimal role in our day-to-day lives. The Libertarian group in Scotland, the Libertarian Party, is full of very nice people and very well-meaning people. For myself, I didn't really see how I sort of fit into it beyond going to meetups and, you know, meeting in a pub and talking about taxation. There isn't really much in terms of actual movement towards achieving some of their aims, which is limiting the role that government plays in our lives. So they have put people forward in council elections, local elections and things like that. That's pretty much all they can do at this point. It's a very small movement. I do have some misgivings with the more hardline anarcho-capitalist type people. I don't think that complete removal of state is A, realistic, or B, even that desirable. So, but broadly I do agree with a lot of their stances and a lot of their talking points and a lot of what policy would be put in place to achieve those aims.
I wouldn't put myself in a sort of, pigeonhole myself in any kind of box or anything. I just tend to believe in more socialist values. I'd say I lean more towards the left. That's just the views I carry. Yes, I wouldn't label myself as anything, you know.
I describe myself as an anarchist, which is left-wing. It's definitely left of centre, but what a lot of people tend to say that they're not left and right, they're out with that paradigm, you know. It's two sides of the same coin kind of thing. And I can understand that, because either way it's capitalism is a problem, and whether you vote left or right, it's still going to be a capitalist government that you're dealing with. But having said that, you do find alliances within Labour, within SNP. You do want to live in a better society, so any small gains are worth fighting for, and that tends to ally itself with the left, there's no doubt about that. But ultimately we are seeking to replace capitalism with something better, which we think is absolutely possible and should be done the sooner the better. So yeah, technically we are left, we say ourselves with the left, but ultimately we're wanting to see a system that has us away with left or right. It'd be an organisation of community power. It's about empowering the community, and there's no hierarchy that can't really justify itself and is not oppressive. But that's a long way coming. So in the meantime, you ally yourselves with movements that are going to make life actually better and seek to empower people, in the meantime.
No, I don't really kind of prescribe to anything kind of particular. I think I kind of, when I was young, I used to have really quite strong views. Like, my dad's a miner, so lots of my family are kind of miners from that background, kind of, suppose, quite socialist, quite kind of communist kind of viewpoints. So a lot of the kind of conversations at parties and things when I was growing up, different kind of events and kind of political conversations were around that kind of viewpoint. So I suppose I kind of grew up with really quite strong socialist, kind of communist, kind of anti-Tory kind of viewpoint through, I suppose, my family opinions, and just obviously kind of my own interpretation of what I read and things afterwards. But I suppose as I got older and looking at kind of the wider picture, I still definitely sit on that side of things. I still definitely believe in helping people, and that society is meant to be kind of have at least an element of a kind of nurturing, supportive basis where, we help each other out generally, or at least we try to. But I suppose I've kind of flitted back and forward from a bunch of different kind of viewpoints, investigated different things, and I don't feel anything, any political theory has got it right. I don't think anybody's got the answer, is I suppose what I'm saying. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it does have principles, one of which does concern hierarchy, which is to make organisation as horizontal as possible. A typical example where it would be a bad idea to remain completely horizontal is where you're in quite a crucial predicament where you require specific skills and abilities. It would be a much better idea to consult the person who has the skills and abilities that can help to solve the situation. So at that point, you would place them above everyone else. But it's the way that they're placed above everyone else is the crucial part. It's much more benevolent than, say, well, it's not for power, moreover. And it's not about, well, we've got more money, so we can buy more things. We deserve more things. We're royal,
The problem that's always presented is the weak, poor and vulnerable people that can't work and all that kind of thing, and who's going to protect them. That's always the argument that's presented. People can't afford the prescriptions, people can't afford to get to the doctors and all that stuff. So you've got to look at economics as well as politics in all these arguments, right? Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to look after this? Who's going to look after that? Whose duty is it to do that? Whose responsibility is it to do that?
I think it's quite interesting because left and right has the dichotomy has sort of morphed and changed. Classically, it comes from the period of the French Revolution. The left, those to the left side of the king favoured a republic, those to the right side of the king favoured a monarchy. Now it seems to have changed in a way where if someone is more in favour of a laissez-faire free market approach to economics, they're labelled right-wing. If someone has more of a socialistic view, they're labelled left-wing. So I don't think the dichotomy now seems to be more about economics than statecraft per se. I don't necessarily know how helpful it is grouping people largely together in these loose sort of groupings. The right wing taking in everyone from free market libertarians and anarcho-capitalists all the way to ethno-nationalists, and the left taking in everybody from social democrats and democratic socialists all the way up to Trotskyites. It seems to just create these two categories and have that be the complete dichotomy of the political discourse doesn't seem to serve to illustrate just the differences in people politically, so I don't think it's very useful.
I think the terms left and right have become very, very extreme. I think that's one thing about politics that nobody could really deny. The left and right terms that maybe we knew of in the 80s, things like Labour and the Tories, it's become far more exaggerated and far more eccentric. I think that's the word I'd use to describe our politics today. It's very eccentric. The left and rights just went completely haywire. It's very extreme, that's one thing I can say. So relevant, yeah, it is relevant.
They're relevant insofar as communicating to each other as to where someone's ideas are placed within a kind of common sense of political views. My thought about what's left and right has always been the left and right of what, and they're meant to be wings, the wings of what? Is it the Roman eagle? Because a lot of politics has just been handed down from Greece and Rome. And I used to play with the idea that anarchism was beyond the left wing. It wasn't something that subscribed to Parliament, but then you have right wing positions that don't agree with government either. Something like an anarcho-capitalist, or maybe some right wingers would be happy with a kind of Mad Max scenario, Fist of the North Star kind of thing. And then how do you reconcile that? So then you need to explore a new concept to explain that. I think in the context of the ethical values held by left and right, I think is relevant in that sense. Which I think the fundamental question is, what does a person think about? What is another person's attitude towards other people? Do they have any concerns for people who are not in their own predicament, who are different from themselves, and for people who might possibly come to be in a worse off situation than they already are? If they don't give a fuck about any of that, then that, to me, I would just denote that as right wing. And for those concerned with trying to help people who are in very bad predicaments for various reasons, whether they're self-inflicted situations or has been imposed on them from above. I think there are more fundamental questions that would, when unified, would kind of constitute what's left and right. The most important question for me is whether other people's freedom is respected, but in our freedom, do we respect other people's freedom, and are we willing to sacrifice some of our freedom so that other people can have the freedom that we would ultimately want for ourselves?
No, I thought about joining the Scottish Socialist Party ages ago. This was before the Tommy Sheridan stuff, kind of stuff. But even at that, to be fair, I kind of went to a few events and they were talking about stuff, and I can't remember what. It was just, I just called bullshit on Tommy Sheridan anyway at that point, and I was like, I don't, so that's the only one I kind of considered it, but I wouldn't, no, I've not, no.
They have been conceived as being natural, and that a naturalist, or maybe more naturist rather than naturalist stance would be that the capitalist globalist way of the world is unnatural, so we have to get back to a natural way. I don't really believe in nature. I think everything is the way it is. It obviously comes together in some sort of unified way, but that's up to us to identify it. I think it has been argued scientifically as well. I couldn't really say anything about that because I'm not skeptical about science, but I'm skeptical about the importance that placed on science's place in the world to explain the world, because there is more than just what is physical. Because science is concerned with the physical world, but there is a metaphysical world as well, which is a world of meaning and values, ethics and norms. So rather than it being something natural or scientific, I think it's about what conscious beings do in transcending the situation that they are in towards what they want. Whether that's for better or worse is a different question. For me, I would like a better situation, not just for myself, but for other people.
I would say I'm a bit of a fundamentalist in the respect that I believe in fundamental values and truths and principles. You live in a country where you think everybody agrees on the same principles and values. I think people are living in a world where they've got a cartoonish perspective of politics, a cartoonish expectation of entitlement and responsibility. And I kind of blame a wee bit of that on our parents' generation in the 70s. I don't think they ever had it that good. You know, I really do think they had it very good. And by them taking their eye off the ball and focusing on other things, it allowed bad actors to come in at local level in councils, and you know that's where you got your kind of cronies and your wee kind of cliques and your nepotism all kind of taking place. And I'm glad a lot of that's exposed. Where I'm at now and where I was when I was 16, 17 and all through my kind of my political journey, from going from way left and environmentalist and socialist worker party and protesting and Occupy and you know, taking direct action to where I am now. It's completely different. I've realised everything's not as simple as we think, and I realised I was looking through a lens of entitlement and lack of self-responsibility. Whereas now I'm a father, I'm older, I look at things and go, do you know what? That was a good thing. Why are we changing it? Why don't we just keep that? You know, and you know, keep that for, you know, just like the NHS, we keep that, but we just make it work better. You know, we make people more responsible.
But I also think that it really depends on how much people value, in Scotland especially, our tradition of law and governance, as opposed to people who would seek to create a more socialistic or communistic model based on other nations. I think that's perhaps more of a true dichotomy in terms of Scottish politics, especially in terms of Scottish independence, because it seems like there were a lot of very, very left-wing voices in the independence movement, but not so much the more nationalistic side of things. It seems like there was a slight imbalance there.
Is there, because it almost comes like I don't know who, I can't remember who it is that said it initially, but like it almost like if you go far enough left or far enough right, you almost come back round to meet in the middle. If you kind of if you radicalise stuff kind of so too far in a way. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's much more complicated. There's much more to the debate and the argument. I mean, even within any side, but I suppose I probably sit more on the left in my kind of social groups and my kind of affiliations with kind of people taking action and having kind of political discussions would come more, I suppose, to what people would say was the left. But it's so diverse and there's so many people you know, there's so many people that totally don't agree with each other within that. But equally, you could sit down with somebody that is defined as right, and but potentially, you know, two people from either side may agree on one thing massively, maybe not the rest of it. So yeah, it's too simplistic.
Picking up, a lot of people are getting fucked off with that whole idea, aren't they? You know. But I mean, that's just, I mean, what other language are you going to use? You know, it's just sort of maybe useful language that's, I mean, that's to be seen. Maybe the younger generation will come up and just say, listen, we're not interested in all that anymore, you know. This is what we're doing, but for the time being, I mean, I'm not good enough to think up an alternative, you know, that seems to be the best way it is. Although I'm not one for the horseshoe theory, you know. Although looking at George Galloway, what he's up to these days, maybe that is a horseshoe theory.
What's horseshoe?
You know, when you're so left wing, you become right wing kind of thing. You know, that sort of authoritarian sort of attitudes. But I mean, I don't know. I think there's a place for left and right. It's kind of helpful. It shows what you're for. You're for social justice, for people over profit, rather than, you know, like right libertarianism, which to my mind is just going to lead to a monopoly of industry. You know, you're going to be ruled by these corporations and you're going to have no recourse whatsoever. But at least now we've got some recourse. You know, you can vote in a nicer manager. You know, maybe you've got Corbyn. You know, maybe he'll put in some nicer laws and not be so draconian. But libertarianism to the right is just the rule of corporations with absolutely no recourse at all. I think it's a dangerous route. I think a lot of people are well-meaning when they say libertarianism, but I don't think they've thought it through.
The most recent one would be Rojava, where they have community councils where all are involved regardless of religion, race, sex and gender, which hasn't really been discussed too much in the press. I think there's been a few articles in The Guardian. There has been documentaries on TV, possibly a Vice one. That's the most recent, which will be heralded as a great success for what it's been able to enact. And then I think probably, I mean, I'm not a great historian, but the one before that would probably be Spain during the Civil War, where communities ultimately seized the means of production and communicated with each other as to who needed what and swapped as far as everyone needed.
Yeah, just basically no power higher than that, maybe of delegates that are voted in at a community level. I mean, I don't know. It's not really about a certain utopia that we're reaching for, you know. There's no kind of grand vision that, oh, this is what it'll look like, let's all go there, you know. I'm sure you know that you've seen the news, they recently defeated ISIS. Now they've got Turkey to face. But yeah, they seem to be setting up I can't remember what they've called it, social federation or something like that. You know, I can't remember the name for it. It's not quite anarchism, but it works for them, and it's been about empowering the community from the bottom up on all levels. Well, I hear as well women's representatives have to be involved in the decision making. Men aren't allowed to rule over women's issues either. So in the Middle East, where we tend to think of that place as, you know, a horror show for women's rights, right in the middle of that, you've got what looks like a beautiful little revolution. I'm sure it's got lots of problems. I'm sure it's not perfect once you look into it, but that seems to be the most interesting place in the planet right now, in terms of social experiments. So yeah, I mean, I want to look into that more myself, but that seems to be what's happening there. Well, everything anarchism says, you know, there's a lot of boxes getting ticked. It does seem to be community-based, and it's a bottom-up system. I think there's some hierarchies going on, but I mean, anarchism isn't against hierarchy. As your parents, you listen to them. That's a hierarchy. That's one that's kind of justified, isn't it? And you'll find loads of them as you go about, but you'll find the ones that are illegitimate, that serve no purpose other than to leash you out your money, or rule over you. So I think they're trying to deal with that. They are trying to create a society that's fair, and there's a lot of people from the West that are going to join them. There's been a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard, that went to fight in their side. A lot of anarchists. So yeah, it has been attracting worldwide anarchist attention. So I mean, if someone was to say, right, if you could press a button, you get rid of government now, would you do it? I wouldn't do it. That'd be an absolute nightmare. We have to replace the institutions that we rely on. Like, we've got the NHS, we've got all sorts of things that are government run, that we'd have to replace them with our own initiatives, ones that involve the community, that empower the community. So yeah, maybe it's there is room for anarchists organising within society. Maybe that's how. I mean, I think anarcho-syndicalism, I could be wrong here, but I think that is a union organising to take over the workplace. So that's an example of what you're saying in it. That's anarchist organising within capitalism. So yeah, I mean, I don't, like these communes you get where folk are dropping out. I don't think that's. I mean, I can understand why folk want to drop out, and live in a commune and forget about it, but that's not really going to change anything. That's living in a bubble, which is extremely tempting. I'd love to do that myself, right enough, but it's not going to change the bigger picture, is it? So yeah, we have to organise in the society as we find it, promote these ideas, and hopefully they'll take.
I'm a big believer in free speech, with a small caveat, i.e. you can't threaten to kill somebody openly. You can't threaten, you can't openly, directly threaten to incite violence, like I say, let's go out and kill this guy, or let's bomb this place, or you can't shout fire in a public place, that's going to cause harm. I think people should be able to talk, be able to say racist things. I think people should be able to say homophobic things. But they should be able to be challenged. I keep saying this, that sunlight's the best disinfectant, and if you put people out in the public open and they say these, if it's a racist thing or a homophobic thing, they'll lose all credibility, because the general people around about them see them for what they are.
Yeah, that was me. I think that was me not that long ago. I mean, I think I'd always sit and watch Question Time and things like that. I'd always been into kind of watching that. But yeah, going along to protests and kind of standing in the rain and giving yourself that self-satisfaction of doing something, do you know what I mean? That was for me a while. And then I got more into it. I got more into things behind things and got given books to read by Sound Thief and things like that. So yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. People do get into it at a shallow level, but then their mind gets opened up to everything else. Yeah. So great philosophers and stuff like that. I read a lot about Taoism and stuff as well. I don't read any book, to be honest with you. I read Darren's book, Poverty Safari, is really good. I do like stories as well, just short stories and things like that. That's the thing. I mean, I've seen some things that he's done relating to that, and it is quite clever, do you know what I mean? You can't really take away from anything like that. I just wish he wouldn't shout so much about fucking other mental stuff, but okay.
Actually a very politically viable tool, because it's a window that people can go through, and something that people can identify with. It's the great meme war of 2016 is something that should be studied in the history books, because it really is very, very interesting how these things really are deeply affecting politics. Whether they're Russian bots or not.
So it's like the people. I mean, no, I don't think anybody likes extremists. I.e., we don't like fascists. We don't like, I personally don't like communists, right? Because they're both completely authoritarian. It's given the state too much power over the human, and that to what you eat, to where you live, to what you can say, what you can think, and. In 1984, when they start taking away with words, we don't need these words. We can start reducing them. We can make thought simple. We can reduce the thought process and let Big Brother look after us. And it made everybody paranoid, because if you can't allow people to express their speech, you're repressing them, which creates anger and resentment, no matter who it is.
There is, because social media will value likes and retweets over actual, sometimes information and facts. So someone could be saying something that's, maybe got a bit of a funny quirk to it, and that'll be taken as, oh, that's gospel, or that's political fact, or that's a social fact, when it's not. It's just been backed up by a satirical comment or something like that. Do you know what I mean? I know what you're saying, way back when, it sounds like I'm talking about back in the days, we would value actual knowledge and people that would read books. And Sound Thief's a great example actually of that, because he's so knowledgeable, and it all comes from Booksmart. He's into philosophy and all that as well. He knows his stuff when he's talking about things. Whereas you jump online and you would see someone who's just got hundreds of laughing faces and, that's funny. That's not real knowledge, but unfortunately in this day and age it's kind of taken as sometimes, yeah.
What I call artificial intelligence is the news. We're replacing intelligence with artificial intelligence. I don't mean computers and software and all that stuff. I mean we're dumbing people down. We're making people stupid. When you restrict freedom, expression, then you've got to restrict everybody's freedom of expression. And where does it stop? And then who gets to decide? Who gets to decide what's right, what's wrong? Because all these things, even good and evil, they're subjective. Right and wrong is subjective. Left and right is subjective. Are you left of centre? Are you far right? Where does the right and the left meet? I seen they actually come round. I say probably the best description here is they actually come round and meet in the middle somewhere, and it's just complete authoritarianism. And it's heartbreaking to see people going to their work. I meet people all the time, and they go to their work now, and they can't talk to people. They can't talk to their pals at work. They're frightened because everybody's become so insecure. They can't express themselves anymore. They can't talk openly. So they're bringing a lot of people are bringing up all their insecurities into the workplace, and they're not getting any work done. It's becoming, and otherwise intelligent people or people that are confident are just going, I give up. I can't be bothered. I'm not interested anymore.
It's kind of my frustration with the indie movement. There's a lot of sharing the posts, but there's not quite a lot of street-based activity. Like we saw in the build-up to the referendum, the first one. It seemed really busy. There was meetings everywhere. Constantly. That should have kept going. Like what we saw in Barcelona. What's the country called? It's just going right in my head. Catalonia. That momentum just built and built and built. There was kind of millions in the streets every other week, it seemed, and meetings going on everywhere. We kind of lost that momentum. So I don't know if that's down to folk are comfortable online, just kind of sharing things, and as you say, maybe not reading books, maybe not getting totally up to date and anything. We're just getting a slither of everything rather than as you say, reading a book, but maybe reading a post about a book.
I think that regardless of where our beliefs are sourced and how we think them up, we always have the unknown to explain, regardless of what it is, what question is posed to us, whether that's a question posed by another person or we just find something that we can't explain and then think of an explanation. I think what we use to explain it's become different, more sophisticated, and it comes from a wider variety of sources. I don't think it's hard to say, but I don't think it's necessarily the case that people by and large are deluding themselves any more or less than they have. I mean, I suspect there's at least one thing in everyone that they don't want to think beyond a certain point about, whatever it might be. For some people it might be everything, for some people it might not be very much. It'll always be the case, I think, that people like to lie or bullshit. And there's greater wealth of things to bullshit about now. Maybe. I don't know. You would have to track the availability of books in print before the advent of personal computers being really popular in the home and then the internet. I think it's just the consequences that can arise from people bullshitting now with what is available to them to bullshit about, which I don't really... I think that would still rest with the elite who take positions of power, because they really bullshit their way into what they do. I mean, if you read any issue of Private Eye and they have an article that tracks someone becoming, say, I don't know, someone taking a position in the Treasury and their qualifications amount to chairing the board of directors of business and business after business that falls on its arse because they overspent or whatever. It's worse now because I think environmental collapse, it's just really upon us. And the world is probably going to end soon, I think.
Everything you know is through experience. Everything you know, right? And that what it means is it's either been second-hand knowledge, so it's been passed to you from something else, or from the news or what you've been exposed to. But if you boil it down, everybody at the same age has the exact same experience. So everybody knows the same. It's what you do with that experience and that knowledge. I mean, it's the amount of rabbit holes political organisations and other things I've been involved in my life that I've had to take heed and go, I've made big mistakes here, and I'm going to learn from that mistake and I'm going to move on. And to me, that's what's called taking responsibility, taking it in the chin,
Yeah, but I mean, if you talk to activists on the far left, and not just activists, I mean, like genuinely funded left-wing think tanks like Hope Not Hate and Stand Up to Racism, he's a gateway to the far right. And that's how they want to paint him, as a gateway to the far right, because he has talked to people on his YouTube channel who could be defined as far right, people like Millennial Woes who are far right. Just because he talks to these people and engages in dialogue with these people doesn't mean he endorses these people or promotes their views. Just the same as he talked to Tommy Robinson and Lon Southern when he was convicted, because they were some of the only journalists to actually give him a fair shake. Sorry for calling Tommy Robinson a journalist. That's don't take that out of context.
It can seem that way, but I mean, I live in a scheme, and we've got the bubble that we live on is sort of like our friends online, but when I go outside, everyone there isn't talking about shit. That's, and if we want change, we've got. I mean, it's ordinary people. We need to get thinking about things like that again. That's what, that's my disappointment in the referendum, that momentum didn't carry on and a whole culture emerged of, of Scotland kind of waking up and thinking about these things. It just seemed to have died, and then it's just the activists are talking amongst themselves online, and they can maybe feel that everything's waking up, but I don't know. We'll see what happens in the next referendum, but there's certain sections of society just aren't quite, involved in the important ones like students, working class and schemes. They're two vital parts of society that we need to get into. But what you've seen about folk no engaging really in topics, I think if you get folk into the real world, like here, you've done here, you know, people do tend to talk about things in maybe a deeper way. But I mean, online it is just, there's a paragraph of what I think, you know.
I just see people picking a side, and that side uses a language, and that side uses a language, and we're all, like, anybody that's got a half decent head on them is caught in the middle, you know.
I can see the point. I can see what you're saying about everybody should be allowed to speak so that we can all fully understand what each side of the argument is. But I think it's also somebody's right to not listen as well as it's somebody's right to speak. So I don't know. I kind of, yeah. Do you know? But I don't think, I mean, maybe no platforming people at universities and things like that. I think that's potentially dangerous, because I think there should be the opportunity for people who want to listen to that to listen to it. If you don't want to listen to it, walk away, don't listen to it. Do you know what I mean? Or heckle the person, tell them that, you know, you think that they're disgusting and whatever. That's all fine as well, because that's their free speech to tell someone that they think their views are horrible. But then also they've got the right to respond to that as well and say, well, you know, I just think that that's my opinion on free speech.
With genuine far-right people, like I remember, I think maybe 2 years ago, there was a Scottish Defence League supposed demo in Edinburgh, and like 300-400 counter-protesters came out, and there was about 8 people from the Scottish Defence League, like less than 10 people. So it's very clear that these ideas are, you know, marginal, they're not popular. When you talk about the rise of the far right, it isn't in street movements like the SDL. I think it's more in online spaces that people are taking on these ultra-nationalist, some neo-fascist ideas. It's as a reaction and a pushback to a lot of what globalisation has brought. It's a reaction and a pushback to certain political lobbies operating within European countries, and definitely the Israel lobby, fractional reserve banking. And yes, there are certainly racist elements to it, but unless there's engagement and a work towards some kind of understanding, rather than what a lot of journalists and think tanks do now, which is just to completely deride these people and push them out and further marginalise them, things aren't going to get better. One of the biggest selling points of the far right is that their views and opinions and right to speech is being suppressed. And when you look at major social media corporations like Twitter and YouTube and Google, massively deplatforming people, when you look at people being arrested and jailed for engaging in, you know, bombastic political speech, it's hard to see how they don't have somewhat of a point, but that's their biggest selling point to people. As soon as you take that away from them, then they can be challenged on their actual ideas. And I do strongly believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant for bad ideas. If you can call a truly bad idea out and properly ridicule it, then that to me would seem to be a better strategy than, as I said, throwing milkshakes at people and hoping that they go away.
Well, we're not all starting from an equal point, are we? You know, there's that whole thing, privilege, which is seems to be a new concept for a lot of people. Maybe it's not a good word, you know. Like a friend of mine said, he reckoned a better word would be advantage, you know. And I can see her point, you know. Privilege does make it sound, you know, if you're white and poor, you can go, wait a minute, where's my privilege, you know? But you're not, you do have maybe slight more advantages than others. So no, we're not all starting from an equal standpoint. That's where capitalism and the right assume, you know, they assume we're all just starting at one and it's your fault for being poor, you know, that rich guy's there because he worked hard. You know, but that's just not the case, is it? So positive discrimination, I can see how it could work. I mean, it's worked in America, hasn't it? There.
Quite a bold statement, isn't it? I've had these discussions with people where what I would have said in the past is, feminism just means that you believe men and women should be equal, which at a fundamental point it does, but like nowadays, particularly kind of the last few years, it has become so much more complicated and muddied and clouded than that I can understand why somebody might have the view that feminism is something other than that and is something a bit more judgy and a bit more making a bit more about making people feel making certain people feel inadequate in their own right, if you know what I mean. So, because there definitely has been a kind of an element of feminism that has become that kind of more radical, which again, radical is that I've not got a problem with radical as such, but I feel like that things have gone a lot. For me, for my opinion, I feel that calling myself a feminist has become a bit more difficult in the sense that obviously I am a feminist. I'm not saying I'm not a feminist, but I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say here. So it's just there's an element where certain actions and certain bits of intellectual kind of work that people have put out there that make me a bit uncertain about how much I affiliate myself with that side of feminism.
It's a comment. Do you know what I mean? It is a comment. I don't think that you should put anyone down for what they are or what they aren't. Do you know what I mean? Because I know this might be controversial. I wouldn't label myself a feminist. I wouldn't say that I'm an out-and-out feminist because of the way I think as well that feminism's looked at in the modern world. It's seen as a very extreme thing. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, just getting on about things, doing things and not kind of shouting about it and kind of making an uproar, that's feminism. Do you know what I mean? Me, for example, I'm supposed to be a statistic. Do you know what I mean? The background I come from, underage pregnancy, drugs, violence, single motherhood, that kind of thing. I took it upon myself to break that cycle. I took it upon myself to be independent and, start doing music and things like that. I would say that's a feminism. That's feminism and working, but I wouldn't call it, I'm a feminist. It's different. Do you know what I mean? I just don't feel that, I couldn't say that. I don't think I could say that. I also think there's a massive difference between first world feminism and feminism in continents like Africa and Asia, where there's massive problems with FGM and things like that we don't experience. I've never had that, and I don't think I could call myself a feminist either, because there's women in this world that go through, forced marriages and things like that I culturally can't relate to. So I don't think, I think there's a lot of things we need to look at globally, worldwide, before we start slapping labels on things.
Yeah, that's it. And it seems like built within that statement is just an inherent and implicit shaming of anyone who falls outside of this thought category that this person is talking about. It's like you will hear people say that feminism just means if you believe that men and women should be equal, then you're a feminist. Well, that's not really all that it means. But when people phrase things in that way, it's very leading. It's like saying, you couldn't possibly think that people shouldn't be equal. Well, therefore you must be, one of us. It's pretty intellectually manipulative when you think about it.
I wouldn't call myself a feminist. I agree with that everybody's equal in the law, right? That's where it stops. Everybody's equal in the law and everybody's got equal responsibility. That's it. I don't think any one group should have any more rights over another group. It doesn't matter what race, colour, religion, what you are. Nobody's got any more rights. The only rights you've got, really, is the right to life and necessity to if you need to get something to eat. Everything else goes,
forward, because is it actually about feminism, or is it about addressing both sides? Because they're obviously, Nikki, that plays in this with as well, my sister, she says that some stuff became really apparent to her after having a baby about the kind of flip side of, kind of gender inequality which is, you know, to do with the way that people were with Dave, with the baby, and like our partner. And she said she'd never really kind of experienced kind of being on the powerful side as such of maybe these kind of things, but at that point she was, and it really, really pissed her off, because just things like, she'd be like, you know, just little comments and things, but she'd maybe be in Asda's or whatever, getting bits and pieces, and Solid have odd socks on, and they'd be like, Dad must have dressed him, isn't it? And Nicky'd be like, no, because if Dad had dressed him, he'd have the right socks on. That's definitely me that's done that. But, you know, like, it's just little comments, but that kind of perception as well, it was kind of flipped. So she always kind of talks about that as being, so I mean, those things are just as relevant within a kind of discussion about equality, and potentially there needs to be a new word, or does there need to be a new word? Could it just be that we talk about that, like gender, that what we want is gender equality, and that's, yeah, I don't know, it's an interesting one.
I don't call myself a feminist because I think it's up to women and females to assess for themselves whether I've given them enough consideration as to how fairly they're being treated in society. I don't necessarily think it's bad sport for a man or male to go around saying, yes, I'm a feminist. I think it would just be kind of facile for me to do so. So I think it's the people who feminism is meant to concern should be the ones to say to me, I think you're falling short here. I think you haven't really considered my feelings here, in which of course I'd want to understand and make reparations for. Plus, I wouldn't want to give myself an easy time by just assuming, oh, well, I'm a feminist, so the way I think about this is bang on the money. So I would leave that up to who it really concerns to say that. As to whether someone is not a nice person because they're a feminist, I think I would scrutinise that statement with taking in mind that we are always becoming something when we become more conscious about situations and subjects. So if, like myself, I don't start off a feminist, and to be confronted with sort of feminist propositions that women haven't been treated fairly through society, men are in a more privileged position, particularly white men, and so on, and then to immediately go on defence and say, I've never mistreated anyone because they're women, so, well, why are you trying to pin that on me? It's not unusual to become defensive about it, but if you read on it, if you stop to think how it must be for a woman or female to be in the everyday situations that they are in their work, to be looked at as a sexual object, all the while being expected to dress a certain way, to wear makeup and to appear a certain way, all the while being paid less than everyone else, then you... And I think this is a crucial point, whether you begin to try and empathise with that, not merely in a rational way by just sitting in your armchair and thinking, I wonder what it must be like. Oh, I see now I know what it's like. The point is, you can't ever know what it's like. You can only ask women and females, what is it like for you to go through this, if you're comfortable talking about it. And if at that point you think, yeah, it really isn't fair for them, there must be something I could try and do. And if I can't change much, then how can I support them? But if you decide, nah, they're just crying, or I don't give a fuck, then you're not a nice person.
I think obviously what feminism actually does mean when it's boiled down is that men and women should be viewed as, not even viewed as equal, but should have equal rights and equal right of opportunity. It's making it very intellectual, very daunting, very difficult to understand. What words can people say? What can they not say? I just feel that it's not accessible, and I'm all about that. I suppose there's always kind of a class element in my thought process, and I feel like sometimes we're away up in the clouds with a lot of stuff that we do in the left, particularly. Do you know, I quite like Milf as well, actually. She was the first feminist kind of like stuff that I read, and it really kind of, it really resonated with me, maybe more than some of the other, like your German Greer and all that that was kind of initially, these are kind of feminist kind of viewpoints. So yeah, I do like her. There's the woman that was what's her name, she was like a really quite radical feminist in the 80s, and then she switched sides and but she kind of came out say she talks about like male suicide, and she kind of switches it around to say there's lots of issues, you know, that men are dealing with as well and stuff. And a lot of what she said, you know, makes sense, but I don't know why that means you can't have, you know, feminism as well, if you know what I mean. I don't know why they have to be exclusive, but
I mean, the thing about everyone having an equal chance to sort of come up through life is great. Then you need to add mitigating factors into that, home life, you know, environment, things like that can play a massive part in someone's outcome. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's a kind of double-edged sword, that sort of idea, because I think effectively going through someone's life is going to affect the outcome anyway. Putting people into boxes, again, that's pigeonholing people, saying there needs to be more women in these fields, does there? Do you know what I mean? I don't know, I'm not an expert in that field, but pushing people to go and do things just to fill quotas seems very wrong. It just seems a very wrong way. It's like pushing your kids to go and get a degree even though you don't really believe that they should have that or whatever. It's just to keep the numbers right. Something not right about that, no. Yeah, but the thing about women, I used to see like a rise in sort of YouTubers and like things like female coders. It was like, look at me getting up in the morning vlogging, and they're sort of like, I'm going to work and stuff. And then sometimes I felt like, are they really doing this because they want to? They're doing it because it's a YouTube thing and they're getting thousands and thousands of subscribers for saying they're a female coder. There's things like that. Now that this quote kind of makes sense, it's starting to make sense.
Do you know, I was actually thinking about this today in the very small kind of context of being a woman in a band, and I was thinking, I was asked to do something, and the first thing that kind of went through my head was, well, that's probably because they need more women on their quota or whatever. And I was like, I would not have thought that 2 or 3 years ago, because to be honest, 2 or 3 years ago, if I was asked to do something, I would be thinking, oh, that's good, I got that despite being a woman rather than I got it for being a woman. So I don't know, it's that kind of interesting one about, is it helpful or not? So I don't know. Did I get asked to do that because I'm a woman or not? I don't know, but it's not a great feeling to have that be the first thing that goes through your head when you think, why have I been asked to do that? I can't remember what it was. So when I was booking the Twisted album launch, I wanted to have like quite a strong kind of female lineup. Partially because I really like, I like kind of female vocal kind of, I like that kind of music, and also I want to support that. But it was pretty hard because a few of the people that I wanted to book initially weren't able to do it. And then some other acts who I think are brilliant weren't quite right for the night. So then it's like, all right, who have we got? We ended up getting a great lineup. It was fine, but it wasn't as easy as just, you know, doing it, because not every female act is free all the time. There is less female acts. It's hard to know when we're talking about equality of opportunity, how can we make sure everybody has the same opportunity? Do you know what I mean? And how can... It's a really difficult thing to do because it is so layered, kind of. Sometimes I even think about this as well, in the sense of kind of, you know, people have, when we're talking about privilege, people have privilege in life not just because they're a man or a woman, or that these kind of the big ones that are, you know, that we talk about a lot. But if someone's confident, is that because of their upbringing and they've had it, you know? But if someone's confident, if someone's charismatic, someone's good looking, if someone's, do you know, like, what, athletic, there's all these other kind of, if you break it down into what creates somebody's individual privilege, it's kind of mind-boggling to think of. And I suppose the argument would be we need to make it as as level a playing field on the things that we can control, and then that gives equality of opportunity from that perspective. But then again, how do you do that? Do you make sure everybody's got exactly the same parents? It's quite hard to do that. Never mind the massive disparity that we've got anyway in society in general, which things that are really obvious that could be fixed, as in, you know, people going to rubbish schools, people going to amazing schools because of money. Do you know what I mean? So it's complicated because even if we were able to fix these kind of bigger ones that should actually, as a society of intelligent beings, we should be able to fix these things and make sure people all get the same education, at least to an extent. There's all this other element of opportunity or kind of privilege that is at play as well.
Well, we're not all starting from an equal point, are we? You know, there's that whole thing, privilege, which seems to be a new concept for a lot of people. Maybe it's not a good word, you know. Like a friend of mine said, he reckoned a better word would be advantage, you know. And I can see her point, you know. Privilege does make it sound, you know, if you're white and poor, you can go, wait a minute, where's my privilege, you know? But you're not, you do have maybe slight more advantages than others. So no, we're not all starting from an equal standpoint. That's where capitalism and the right assume, you know, they assume we're all just starting at one and it's your fault for being poor, you know, that rich guy's there because he worked hard. You know, but that's just not the case, is it? So positive discrimination, I can see how it could work. I mean, it's worked in America, hasn't it?
I thought it was very good. I thought it was very well done. It was very balanced, and I thought that Cassie J went to good lengths to put herself in the documentary, insert herself in there to make her biases while going in present, and then also make it present that how her thoughts were changing through the process of the documentary. I remember a part of it where, you know, as she's interviewing these men's rights people, she starts doing these sort of video logs afterwards, trying to disprove the things that they've said, and then she's realised that a lot of that wasn't really her trying to tackle their ideas. It was her fighting against an impulse she had to sympathise with them. And I think that's a very honest moment, because with political polarisation, we can often fall prey to our sort of worst psychological impulses. When you see somebody on the other side of the fence, or someone who's posed as an opposition to you or your ideas, it's much easier to become standoffish than it is to become sympathetic, you know. But I think that's what the conversation and the discussion needs. I think it generally does need more sympathy.
The whole notion of red pill, that's Alex Jones and all that shit, so I would just go, my alarms would go off and go, right, you know, I'm not interested. I can tell you hate that notion, but it's true. I just can't. I'm interested in the echo chamber, man. I like my echo chamber.
The men's rights people are on some college campus in I think it's Toronto or somewhere, and one of the counter protesters says these people use this front of men's rights to cover up the fact that they're actually white nationalists and neo-fascists. Yeah. There's a real strong paranoia from leftist activists, and it's very easy to whip it up. Yeah. When you actually watch the Red Pill, you go, this is a very centrist movie, and the funny thing is, it does humanise the men's rights activists beyond what a lot of feminists and left-wing activists want them to be humanised as, because it shows they've just got concerns that are perfectly valid and perfectly, you know, all kinds of examples of how men can and are being hard done by, and really they're not that different than the feminists. Like, but the first step of a lot of left-wing activism is to paint your opponent as this horrible character that it's okay to attack. It's Alinsky-esque.
Cassie J was pretty much what you would say a third or fourth wave feminism, or whatever you want to say, challenging the men's rights activists and stuff like that. And out of that, she came out realising, wow, you know, and she was attacked. So it's like the group hive thinking, I'll call it. And it's the same where it's feminism or socialism, they're all cults. They're all religious groups, right? They've got blasphemy laws. You can't say these things, otherwise you're against our group think. And that happened to her. She was attacked. She was. I really liked the interviews. I liked the perspective where she went both sides. I always liked both sides. I think that's where journalism's lost today. Journalism's just activism now. It's lost the both sides of the argument.
It's always interesting to hear criticisms of someone who's decided that they're not a feminist anymore. And I always find it interesting to see the criticisms, like you say, that she never was a feminist then, as if she was some mere object that didn't think, and it just can't possibly be the case that she thought this and then changed her mind, which is to say she wasn't free to think. And if that's what you think about people, I don't know how that squares in feminism, because surely you have to be free to think and choose who you want to be in order to become who and what you want, which is supposed to be a resistance against, you know, bastards imposing themselves as being necessary to stop women and females becoming what they want to be. So, yeah. What I would think with this lassie standing up to say, well, I'm not a feminist anymore, my first interest, well, why did she think that? Because I don't know everything that she believed in before that she now doesn't believe in, but my interest would be what sets of premises did she agree with to then not believe in them, and why has she changed, rather than just thinking off the bat, oh, well, she doesn't believe this, so therefore she must be a bastard, which that will kill any movement.
I've got friends that are trans, and like I've had discussions with them about that. This kind of like about other people's opinions of it, and things like how again, it's a very complicated thing, and it's very different for everybody that kind of goes through it. I don't think one person that's trans has necessarily the same experience as another person, or the same. You know, it's a complicated thing to understand if you're not there. But I think one of the important things about that is that if you don't understand, then you've got to give you don't understand, you know what I mean? And that's fine if you don't fully understand it. It's okay to say, oh, I don't get it, but you've got to let the person, you've got to give the respect to the person that feels that way, or as you know, you've got to give that respect. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I don't like this view in the kind of turf thing about saying like the trans women are doing that so that they can get into the women's toilets and eye them up or whatever. Do you know, that's actually kind of how ridiculous some of this stuff is about that kind of thing. The only issue I have is gender neutral toilets, men pissing on the seats. Like that's my thing. I don't think people just like do these things for lightly. I've not met anybody that's made that kind of decision that has done that just, you know, on a whim or whatever, or just for the crack or something. It's not really like my experience anyway of people doing that. And if folk identify as a man or a woman or whatever, then that's okay with me.
This is where I don't know if this is called sitting on the fence and getting skelfs, but I'm a big believer in live and let live. Do you know what I mean? I can't tell someone you're not that. I can't tell someone you are something. Do you know what I mean? Getting into the ins and outs of that's quite a tricky conversation, because again, I think it's still a very raw subject in society. Some people aren't mature enough and ready enough to sit down and have an actual conversation about that. But I think it needs to happen at some point. and women and men all need to be included in this conversation because it affects society as a whole, all these things. So yeah, as I say, live and let live, that's the standpoint I come from. But I mean, yeah, I think a deeper conversation needs to be had about that so that, yeah, these things can be ironed out.
Yes. I mean, what else can you say, you know? I'm not going to argue another person's right to exist. That just seems gross, you know what I mean? Yeah, they are. This is, I mean, all I can do is support and solidarity with others that are struggling, you know. It's not really an issue that affects me. All I can do is listen to others and support them, so. Aye, but I wonder about that, you know, because the people who throw that concern up tend to, I wonder about their motives, you know. I mean, the idea of like, well, just a man walking in going, I am a woman, and everyone just accepting it. I mean, people aren't stupid. You know, that's obviously, I can't say that happen. And again, as I'm saying, I wonder about the motives of the people who are throwing that up. They tend to be the right-wing element of feminism in it, that little TERF thing and all that in it. That's all them. So, aye, from what you're explaining to me there, aye, it sounds like a good thing, yeah. It sounds like it's there to protect those that are transitioning, so that can only be a good thing.
If anybody wants to believe whatever they want, I've not got any right to question that. As long as they don't impinge on my rights, I don't care.
The problematic being given that if you allow someone who was a male, who now identifies as a woman, could prey upon females in toilets. I mean, it's possible, but what's to stop a male just going into a woman's toilet anyway and waiting for someone to come in? I don't think it's actually changed in the sense of, you know, who's threatened in any way. Like, there's myriad ways to stalk and maim people anyway. I don't really see how that one should be singled out. But moreover, I think anyone's free to identify as anything they want, as long as as anything and as anyone they want, as long as they're not doing it to harm someone else. They're free, can do what they want.
Dangerous. It basically dissolves the concept of women and men. In fact, a lot of the men's rights groups and stuff like that, and a lot of the intellectual people have kind of noticed this first, but it's only now that, like, groups within the lesbian community, or if you, I don't even like using that community, but people within this community are starting to see, and feminists are starting to see the destructiveness of this. That if I'll give you an example, if I can self-identify, right, then what's to stop me going like, well, I'm going to retire at 65 because women can retire earlier than man. What's that, you know? What's to stop me going like that? Well, do you know what? I'm going to go to a women's prison and just attack women. I could be a predator. There's people believe in utopia, right? I think this is what's wrong. Everybody believes in this utopia that if everybody acts in good faith, we'll all be all right. There's too many bad actors out there. We can't trust. We've got to have a certain level of responsibility. We've got to have a certain level of barriers and boundaries, and that's what I'm saying. It's just it's nonsense.
So with no, he or she could do this with no sort of therapy, counselling, GP, police, anything like reports going into their background and stuff like that. That's where it gets very tricky, because no, I don't agree with that. I think what you said, the best of intentions were probably put down for that, but I don't think they really knew the consequences or were prepared for the consequences. And that would be something you'd have to do, would be vetting everyone, putting money into that, things like that. Yeah, there's a lot. It's not just about vetting people. I mean, that you can't just. It's not your name. Like I could go and change my name to Star Magic tomorrow if I wanted to, and pay the council a fee to change my name, but it's not the same. You know, if your gender and things like that, I think that's something you have to discuss with someone, your GP, social workers, things like that. You know, I recognise the need for educating our younger generation on a wide range of issues that are changing in our society. Transgender hasn't been one of them. The school and the education system, I don't believe, are the place to do it. Parents in the home, because it's their children, you know, I believe that's their responsibility to teach their children about those aspects of life, ultimately those aspects of life would have more impact on the family home than they maybe would in the school system and education system. I'm not a parent myself, but I mean, I would hate for my parental rights to be taken out my hands by an education system to come along and say, you know, your children are getting taught X, Y and Z, there's nothing you can do about it, and you know, that's it. With that being said, I've got nothing against that way of life. I just don't believe it should be taught to kids that early, just because I believe, you know, your brain's soaking in so much at that age, you know, education, numerical and languages and things is far more important than learning about people's lifestyles. Do you know what I mean? There's room for any agenda to creep in on that level when you're taking rights off of parents and you're putting it into the nanny state effectively. School systems are taking over the parental rights. That leaves room for any agenda to sort of creep in. I mean, again, it's very important to teach our young generation about ways of life and about people and about different aspects of society and the world we live in, but I really don't think the classroom's the place to do it, and I don't think the certain levels that people have been talking about, it's just not the right way to go about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, probably. It depends again on the circumstances, but yeah. Aye, man. I think I would.
Why not? No, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't condone violence. I don't, two wrongs don't make a right, that sort of thing. But I mean, I to be honest with you, if I was in that situation, I don't think I wouldn't do that. Do you know what I mean? But cunts get slapped, man. Cunts get slapped.
Fucking kick his head in and make him scared to organise. I mean, that's the only thing that works. It's worked in the past and it'll work again. You know, I mean, it goes hand in hand with debate. Obviously, you do have to put that out there. I mean, when anti-fascist action in the 90s, that was the first time I came in contact with this kind of thing. They were doing talks in schools as well as kind of, and if the Nazis were selling newspapers, you know, they'd take their corner, you know. But on top of that, they were organising Holocaust survivors to do workshops, you know. So it's not just, I think a lot of people get it mixed up, you know. But I'm afraid fascism is a real and immediate threat and has to be stomped wherever it rears its head, and that is everyone's duty. So, yeah, I mean, there's some folk aren't kind of able to punch a Nazi. That's fair enough, but yeah, they do have free speech, but their free speech comes at a cost, you know, and that cost is we will stop you at all costs, you know.
I mean, anyone that subscribes to all the principles of Nazism and fascism, whether that was in obviously Nazism in Germany, whether that was fascism in Italy and France, and then in Spain, and thinks, you know, Jewish people are wrong for what they are, and anyone else who's not. I don't see why I should have to have tolerance for that. And some people like to simplify, but that's being intolerant about tolerances. Well, to me, that's just firing words together that oppose each other and create contradictions, but that's not the situation in the street for me. It's not the kind of thing that I would want to loose in the world.
What does a Nazi look like? Am I going to punch somebody because somebody said something? I'll give you an example. I come from a family. I've got brothers and sisters, right? Sometimes my wee brothers and sisters would go, this guy's battering me, because they wanted me just to bully somebody, right? Am I going to go and bully him on the word with my brother and sister? Sometimes I had to have a word with my brothers and sisters and go, you're going to get me in trouble, right? Sometimes I've stepped in, right? Am I just going to go on a whim and just start punching people? No. You know, it's just like saying, punch a Catholic, punch a Protestant, you know. It's an identity.